Mercedes' dreams of a second consecutive double podium were to George Russell crash during the Canadian Grand Prix. The British driver was in fourth place, trailing Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin, when he collided with the inside curb at turn 9. On lap 13 of 70, the Mercedes launched and lost rear traction on landing, skidding into the wall and damaging the right rear tyre rim and front wing. Russell's car was fixed and put back on track after crawling back to the pits, although joining the back of the safety car train at the back of the field. "It's a bit bent, but okay," he told his team via radio. Will this be something Mercedes holds against him? Will Toto Wolff lash out at his driver for losing important points in the battle for second in the Constructors' Championship? At the end of this season, losing 12 secure points here in Montreal could come costly, especially if Aston Martin keep up their performances. Even before the crash, George Russell never looked on pace with Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton in Montreal, but fourth place early in the Canadian Grand Prix would have been a good reward and increased the team's lead over Aston Martin in the battle for second in the championship. That makes an out-of-character mistake ruin its day. Given that he was able to continue once he returned to the pits, his and Mercedes' disappointment was only compounded by the fact that a handful of recovery points were most likely on the table, even if he felt Albon was too quick in a straight line to pass, until he had to park up late on due to excessive brake wear. Toto Wolff, Mercedes team principal, has now explained why George Russell retired from the Canadian Grand Prix. After recovering from an accident on lap 13 to sit in a points position, the British driver was instructed to withdraw his W14 in the final moments with a brake problem. When asked if the brake problems were related to Russell's earlier incident, Wolff said, "The oxidation matrices were high on both cars, but after he hit the wall, interestingly, the oxidation matrix went dramatically up on the left, and at that stage, we felt he wouldn't finish the race, so we retired the car." George Russell has said that his disappointment from the Canadian Grand Prix is a bitter pill to swallow, despite Mercedes displaying encouraging signals on the track. After the British driver crashed at turn 9, Russell's right rear and front wing were damaged, but after crawling back to the pits under safety car circumstances, he was able to continue, although at the back of the field. Addressing the crash, Russell said, "I went a bit wide into turn 8. Knew I was going to hit the curb, but I wasn't expecting the sausage curb to have such a violent response. And the next thing, I'm in the air and lost the rear when I landed, then in the wall. It all happened really quite suddenly. Sorry to the team. For sure, there was P3 and P4 in the car for us both, but positives to take away that the car was reasonably competitive." Asked if he initially thought his incident had put him out of the race, Russell said, "I did, to be honest. I was surprised I was able to continue. I was very close to pulling up, but I learned from my Silverstone experience not to stop early. For sure, it is a difficult pill to swallow, but that's how sport should be. Once you make a mistake, you should be punished for it." Russell finally pulled from the race in the closing stages, with his Mercedes team claiming that his left front brake temperature was crucial. On the state of his W14 after rejoining the race, Russell explained, "It didn't feel perfect, but it was absolutely good enough to drive. The rear toe was probably a little bit out. We could have probably finished P8, but we were in a lot of traffic. The pre-race predictions, we weren't expecting to be in that position, hence why we probably got the brakes in the wrong place. I am pretty sure I was in so much traffic. We weren't planning to be, and the brakes weren't in the right spot for that." Will this come back to bite George Russell in the later stages of the season? Will these 12 certain points mess up a position in the Drivers' Championship? Or perhaps Constructors for Mercedes? And will Toto Wolff have some consequences for George after his mistake? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Although George Russell was not able to finish the race, his teammate was, but not at a pace he was comfortable with. Lewis Hamilton feels Mercedes lacked the pace to beat Fernando Alonso at the Canadian Grand Prix. The Mercedes driver was in a close race for second place with Fernando Alonso, but he feels Aston Martin has gone another step forward with its car changes. Despite getting a stronger start and overtaking the Spaniard in the early parts of the race, Alonso was able to recover the lead before the first pit stop. Mercedes chose medium tyres for Hamilton's last stint, with Alonso on the hards, prompting a late charge from the 7-time world champion. He finished 4.7 seconds behind Alonso after completing the last 30 laps on the medium tyre. "Unfortunately, we didn't have the pace today. We knew this weekend wouldn't be our strongest circuit as we struggle in the low-speed corners particularly," said Hamilton after the race. "That's really where I was losing to Fernando and to Max just on traction out of turn 2 and out of pretty much every corner. We've got a lot of work to do just to add rear downforce to the car and a little bit more efficiency, but I do believe we will get there at some stage, but Max was a little bit gone. Mercedes seemed to be back on track after introducing enhancements at the Monaco Grand Prix and then taking a double podium in Spain. However, with Aston Martin making further major changes to their car this weekend, it has highlighted the gap that Mercedes still has to close in order to defeat them on merit. We were slowly chipping away, but the Astons took a little bit of a step ahead this weekend when they added upgrades. We are working on bringing some more moving forwards, to just have this consistency and be up on the podium here in Montreal. But Lewis Hamilton landed on the podium for the second time in 2 races, hoping that this will give Mercedes an advantage in their fight back against Red Bull and Aston Martin. Also discussed how important this challenge is to him and how his current vehicle feels. It's been great to be on the podium 2 races in a row. It's really fantastic for us, said Hamilton at the post-race press conference. We were also running 4th in Monaco, so we're definitely getting closer. It's going to be a battle of development, I guess, over the rest of the season. I reckon Max's team are already working on next year's car, so we need to take our eye a little bit off the ball and focus on next year also. The Mercedes driver also stated that the struggle his team is now experiencing is not frustrating, but that he expects their efforts will pay off in the future. It's not a frustration anymore, if it ever was. There's nothing I can do about their amazing performance. It's not easy with the regulations to find the amount of performance that they have advantage-wise. As I said, I look forward to. I'm happy to firstly be back in the mix, and I'm just hoping at some stage we can have a little bit more level, so we can get back to some good races we had back in 2021. To have all 3 of us in a super tight battle would be sick, the Briton continued. Hamilton also discussed how his latest Mercedes car feels on the track. It doesn't feel a huge difference to the beginning of the year. There are some elements of the car which do feel different, obviously with the upgrade. But yeah, it's just that we just have a little bit more downforce in the car. It's definitely not the car that, characteristics-wise, the car that's going to be able to beat the Red Bull just yet. And so we've got to work on that. I mean, for example, it was very bumpy this track, and I think everyone was struggling. But our car is very stiff, but I think we're all struggling with the stiffness of our cars. The Mercedes driver expanded on the qualities of his car. After all, it was a good day in Canada for Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton finished 3rd, and the general pace seemed to be significantly faster. As a result, Andrew Chauvelin is a happy guy after the race, and doesn't seem to be bothered about the lost 12 points. At least, not for now. The team was looking for a double podium at the Canadian Grand Prix, with Hamilton and George on the 2nd row of the grid. Russell's race was wrecked by a crash, therefore that didn't happen. We knew this track would be more difficult for us than Barcelona, so it's encouraging to see that we are very close on pace to Aston Martin and Ferrari. Lewis did a great job to get on the podium today. We didn't quite have the pace we needed to get 2nd, but when we look at the tracks that lie ahead of us, we should have a car that can regularly fight for the top 3. Chauvelin let it be noted with Mercedes' press release. The trackside engineering director is aware that more work remains to be done. We've clearly got a bit of pace to find before we'll be worrying Max, but the team is working well to bring performance and very motivated to close that gap. Chauvelin came across a frustrated Russell at the finish line after the Briton himself made a mistake. His race ended due to a front brake wear issue. That was not a direct result of the incident, but because of the traffic he faced as he battled through the field. We know he'll come back strongly in Austria, as the team continues to push forward, Chauvelin concluded. What are your thoughts on Mercedes' performance? Were you happy with the result? And what are you expecting for the Austrian Grand Prix next week? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching today's video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with everything regarding F1. We'll see you in the next video.